After refusing to trim my oak tree that slightly hung over his driveway, my neighbor cut it down at midnight with a chainsaw, then poured gasoline on my flower beds. When I confronted him, he growled, "Your nature's dead. Just like your rights." I stared at the ashes, whispering, "You shouldn't have touched what grew from my father's hands." The next morning, police found something buried under the roots that made him. Let me tell you something straight, some things you don't touch. My father's oak tree was one of them. I live in Rockford, Illinois. Not the best place, not the worst. I've been in the same house for most of my life. My father built it with his own 2 hands in the early 80s. He planted that oak tree the year after I was born. Said it'd grow tall with me? And it did. Every storm, every season, that tree stood its ground. It shaded our front porch, held up a tire swing when I was a kid, and dropped a mountain of leaves every fall that my dad made me rake until my arms ached. I cursed it sometimes. But when he died in 2015, that tree was the only thing left that still felt like him. That's where I'd go when I needed to talk to him. I know it sounds dumb. But some people pray. I had the oak. That changed when Clive moved in next door. He bought the old Martin place after it sat empty for a while. I figured someone would eventually. When I saw him hauling boxes from a beat-up U-Haul, I walked over, said, "Welcome," and offered him a beer. He looked at the bottle like it was poisoned and said, "Don't drink." Then he turned and walked inside. Okay. So, not friendly. Fine. The trouble started about 6 weeks later. He came stomping up to my porch one afternoon, didn't even knock. Just stood there with his arms crossed and said, "That tree's overhanging my driveway. Dropping acorns. My truck's getting scratched. You need to cut it back." I told him calmly, "Yeah, it hangs over a little, but not by much. Trees on my property, roots are mine. You can't just trim it without city approval." He snorted. "You think I care about some city form?" I told him, "Well, you should. It's a protected tree. You start hacking at it without a permit, that's a fine." He said, "We'll see," and walked away. I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. The next few weeks, I caught him staring at the tree every time he stepped outside. Like he was planning something. I told myself not to escalate it. Just another angry guy who couldn't stand not having control over every square inch of the world around him. Then came the night of the chainsaw. It was a Wednesday. I was asleep when I heard the roar. Not like a lawnmower or some kid's dirt bike. This was deep and angry. I looked at the clock, 12:17 a.m. I ran to the window and saw him under this big-ass work light, goggles on, slicing into the trunk of my father's tree with a chainsaw. I didn't even put on shoes. I ran out screaming, "What the hell are you doing?" He didn't even look at me. Just yelled over the engine, "Tree's a hazard!" I tried to grab his arm. He shoved me back. By the time I could stop him, it was too late. The trunk was split halfway through. The rest of the oak collapsed with this cracking sound that felt like it hit me. The branches snapped on the ground like bones. He shut off the saw and looked at me. "You had your chance," he said. Then he walked over to my flower bed, my late mother's bed, where I'd planted her favorites every spring, grabbed a red gas can, and without even hesitating, poured it out. Hydrangeas, marigolds, even the rose bush she planted on their 30th anniversary, drenched. I yelled, "Clive! Stop!" He struck a match. The flames swallowed the garden in seconds. The smell of smoke and burning roots hit me hard. He looked at me, standing in front of the fire like he was proud. Then he said the line I'll never forget. "Your nature's dead. Just like your rights." Then he turned and walked inside. I called the fire department, not the cops. The fire didn't spread beyond the bed, and I didn't want a drawn-out fight. Not yet. I just stared at the blackened tree stump and the smoldering remains of my flowers. And I whispered to nobody really, "You shouldn't have touched what grew from my father's hands." Next morning, the city came to haul off the tree remains. 2 guys from Public Works, Ron and Tito. Ron was older, quiet type. Tito was chatty. They started digging around the roots to pull out the trunk. I stayed inside, just watching. Then I saw Ron freeze, lean down, and wave Tito over. Then he waved me out. "You might want to come see this," Ron said. I walked over. There was something sticking out of the dirt, tangled in the deeper roots. It wasn't just roots anymore, it was metal. Old, rusted, with faded green paint. Tito said, "Looks like an ammo box." I knew what it was before they pulled it free. I'd seen one like it before. My dad had a similar one in the basement, locked, but he said it was just mementos from the war. That one disappeared a year before he died. I figured he'd thrown it out. They pulled it out. It was sealed tight, with some kind of wax along the edges. They didn't open it. They called the police. I didn't stop them. Cops came. 3 of them. They opened it on my lawn, careful like it might explode. Inside there were dog tags. Belonged to someone named Edward Keene. A stack of black and white photos. Most were jungle scenes. Soldiers. One was my dad. Another, I couldn't believe it, was Clive. There was also a piece of blood-stained cloth, with a U.S. flag patch, and a bullet casing. One of the officers, a guy named Maynard, held up the tags and walked over to Clive's house. He asked if he recognized the name. Clive, standing on his porch with arms crossed, said, "Never heard of him." But his face said otherwise. That was when things really started to fall apart. After the cops left, Clive went back inside like nothing happened. No one arrested him. No one even searched his house. But I saw the way Officer Maynard looked at the photos. He lingered too long on the one with Clive in it. Something was off. That night I couldn't sleep. I sat by the window, staring at the black stump where the oak had stood. Then around 3:40 in the morning, I saw a flashlight moving in Clive's backyard. I stayed low. Watched. He was digging. Not fast, but deep. Quiet. Like he'd done it before. The next morning, I went out and walked along the edge of our properties, near where his backyard fence ends. Sure enough, fresh dirt. A long, shallow patch, maybe 6 feet by 2. I didn't say anything. Not yet. I made a different call. I called my cousin Jeremy. He used to be in military police. Served 2 tours. Got out, started doing private investigations on the side. I told him everything, about the box, the dog tags, the photo of Clive, even what I saw the night before. Jeremy didn't hesitate. "I'll be there tomorrow." When he showed up, he brought a friend, Mike. Big guy, quiet. Didn't ask questions. They brought ground-penetrating radar. I didn't ask where they got it. I didn't want to know. They scanned my yard first, then the fence line. Then they hit something near the fresh patch of dirt in Clive's yard. "Metal," Jeremy said. "Big. Could be a second box." He looked at me. "You said the guy was in your dad's old photos. You know if they served together?" I nodded. "Vietnam. Dad never talked much about it, just said some things he saw weren't meant to be remembered." Jeremy got real quiet. Then he said, "You need to be careful. If what's in that box is anything like what we found yesterday, this guy's got more to hide than just dead flowers and a bad attitude." I thought about calling the cops again. I didn't. Instead, I decided to push him. That evening, I waited until he was in his driveway, polishing his damn truck like it was gold. I walked up and said, "What was in the second box, Clive?" He didn't even flinch. Just kept polishing. "You were in that photo," I said. "With my dad. And Keene. You said you didn't know him?" He stopped. Turned. Looked me dead in the eyes. "You don't know what you're poking at," he said. "Your father was no hero. He was just better at burying things." I said nothing. He took a step closer. "And you?" You keep digging, you'll end up under that stump. I walked away. My hands were shaking, but not from fear. From rage. That night, I made copies of the photos. Sent them to every contact Jeremy had. He found an old military reporter, now retired, who used to cover missing soldiers. The name, Edward Keene, caught his attention fast. 2 days later, that reporter published a blog post. New evidence surfaces in disappearance of Vietnam vet Edward Keene. It had the photos. The dog tags. A pixelated zoom-in of Clive, younger, standing behind my dad in the jungle. The post didn't name Clive directly, but it didn't need to. That same night, a black SUV parked outside Clive's house. 2 men in suits knocked on his door. They weren't local. They didn't smile. He didn't answer at first, but they waited. Eventually, he opened the door. They walked in. He didn't come out for hours. The next morning, Clive's windows were covered. His truck was gone. But what was strange was that he wasn't. Later that day, I got a letter in my mailbox. No stamp. Just folded paper. It said, "You think you're fighting for your father. But you don't know what he did. You should have let the roots rot." I stared at those words until it got dark. That night, someone banged on my door. That knock on the door wasn't the police. It was an older man, dressed in jeans and a faded army jacket. Maybe 70, 75. His face was sun-damaged, and his eyes looked like they'd seen more than they should have. He introduced himself. "My name's Reggie Keene. Edward Keene was my younger brother." I let him in. We sat at my kitchen table, coffee between us. He didn't sugarcoat anything. "My brother never made it home from Vietnam. The army gave us the usual, missing in action, presumed dead. But I knew something wasn't right. He'd been writing us letters every week. Then they just stopped. No warning. No body. No nothing." He leaned forward. "That photo your cousin dug up. That's the first proof I've seen in 50 years. He pointed at Clive in the photo. "I recognized that son of a bitch. He was in my brother's unit." I asked him, "You think Clive had something to do with it?" Reggie looked at me like I was slow. "I know he did. And your daddy probably did too." That hit hard. I always knew my father had secrets. He drank heavy some nights, stared out the window like ghosts were just standing on the lawn. But I never thought. I asked, "What kind of man was my dad over there?" Reggie didn't answer right away. Then he said, "They did things. Black ops, off-record missions. Sometimes the ones who came back weren't the same men. Some of them, they weren't men at all by the time they left the jungle." It made my stomach turn. Reggie asked if he could take the ammo box and dog tags. I said yes. He left that night. That should have been the end. But Clive came back. Not with words. Not with threats. He broke into my house. I came home one night, found the front door cracked open, lock busted. Inside, drawers dumped, furniture knocked over. And on my living room wall, written in black spray paint, "You opened a grave. Now sleep in it." I called the cops. They said they'd file a report, but no cameras caught him. Nothing stolen. No proof. I knew I had to end it myself. So I made a plan. I knew Clive had something buried. I remembered where we'd seen the metal signature on the scanner. I waited until he was gone. He still made those late-night drives, always at the same time. Jeremy and Mike came with me again. We dug fast. This time, we found a second box. Inside were more photos, more documents, military files. Burned pages. But one thing stood out, a field report. Dated August 14, 1971. It listed 4 soldiers: Captain Harold Shaw, my father, Sergeant Clive Mercer, PFC Edward Keene, Lieutenant Ronald Bales. The last line of the report read, "Lieutenant Bales and PFC Keene failed to return from recon. Presumed Kia. Internal review not required." That was the cover-up. That was where it all went wrong. Clive and my father left those two men behind. Or worse. That report, combined with the photos, was enough. Jeremy knew a military contact who took it straight to a federal investigator. Within 48 hours, a case was opened for war crimes and cover-up. Clive's past came back like a wrecking ball. He was arrested at 4 a.m. They found him trying to burn documents in his backyard fire pit. He didn't go down easy, tried to run. Fought the agents. Got tackled into the grass like the dog he was. I watched from my porch, arms crossed. He saw me and screamed, "You don't know what your father did! He was worse than me!" Maybe he was right. But I didn't flinch. The news hit every local outlet. Retired soldier arrested in decades-old war crimes case. My dad's name came up, too. They painted him as a hero, but with shadows no one wanted to talk about. I was left in the middle, caught between truth and legacy. My house never felt the same after that. The flower beds were dead. The oak was gone. All I had left were ashes and broken pieces of the past. A few weeks later, I planted a new tree. Not in the same place. A bit off to the side. This time, I didn't do it for my dad. I did it for Keen. And when I buried the roots, I placed a copy of his dog tags beneath them. Let him grow again. Let him finally come home. As for Clive? He's facing life. And me? I learned that sometimes revenge doesn't look like violence. It looks like truth. It looks like dragging someone's secrets into the sunlight, where they can't hide anymore. He thought he burned what mattered. But all he did was dig up something worse. Something that buried him.